tongue is numb, the Keurig's clean. Your dog is dead, it's a Ponzi screen. Ponzi screen, Ponzi screen, because it's just something to do.
Very nice. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you, David.
Hey, thanks.
I appreciate everything you do and everything that you're about. And
do you appreciate my new glasses?
Oh, they are new. Okay, all right,
Yeah.
all right. Next, new. I think it's an updated look. I like that.
Yeah. It's a new look. That's what I'm going for. I'm going for like 2001 cool.
No, if you were 2001 cool, they would be thicker and obscure your face more, because that's what people wore back then. Like just obnoxiously thick Buddy Holly glasses.
Really? I thought that was like 2008 or 2009. I'm going for like dad just got out of like playing in his dad band or something like that, or like dad just got back from a trip with his family. I don't know. I'm not really sure. These aren't even real glasses. So I've been having eye trouble, and
you have blue blockers, don't you?
Yeah, I do. These are blue.
I could tell they're yellow. They're a little yellow. Look at them. You can see they're a little yellow. Yeah.
I've been having a lot of eye strain.
All right. Okay. All right.
So I'm putting on my blue blockers. These are my workplace safety equipment is what I'm wearing right now.
Nice, man. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. All that being a keyboard jockey is an occupational hazard.
Yeah. The most dangerous job in America is posting.
Honestly, if I don't mean to paint with too broad of a brush, but like of all the people here who would have had blue blocker glasses, I kind of would have anticipated it being Gabe. Like, I don't know. I feel like you're very upfront with the asthma and having a fragile body. So, I
bought my father some of those glasses.
Okay.
Because he retired and now he is like a full-time poster. All my friends follow my dad's IG account and send me texts about it, and they're like, dude, he's living his best life.
Yeah.
And he unironically just posts videos just of himself doing the most mundane things, but for whatever reason all of that is just Xanax for my friends. It's just calming and soothing.
Just like a relaxed boomer. That's what I do in my life. Yeah.
It's like my dad's like, hey, let me here's a video of me grilling some salmon. Salmon's really good. It's really good. Fatty omega-3. You're gonna get. It's just like a lean protein, and they love it, man. It's like watching your chia pet grow.
Okay, all right. Yeah, okay. So what you're saying is this is just a matter of time for you. It's just a matter of time.
It is. When you asked David how he's doing, and it just made me think, right, in these trying times we've got to keep an inventory of all the things we're grateful for. Mm-hmm. I'm grateful for just the fact that we have clean tap water here in New York City. Free tap water.
Of course.
Because of all the apocalyptic things that I'm anticipating in the next decade, one of them that I'm not looking forward to is the imminent or impending water wars.
Dude, to be thirsty, sucks.
Yeah, the one thing I'm grateful for is being right, is being correct about. I think that we just want to say this is the fact that water is now a future. It's registered as on exchanges. There's some funds that are using it as a commodity. We've discussed this before. If you go back to your Ponzi Scream episodes, we were talking about the song of cobalt and water. And what was the last one? I really should have.
Probably lithium or something.
Yeah, something like that. Anyways, no, I am very grateful that we are doing okay. We can still drink water for free. Oh wait, no, we can't. We have to pay that to your landlord. That's
oh yeah. Well, maybe you do. I don't have to pay a water bill for my landlord.
Okay, socialism. Look, before we get too much into talking, I want to introduce our guest for this week. Is a friend of mine from school. This is Shaoul Sussman. He is a fellow at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, and he's also an attorney. And so, Shaoul, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good. Thanks for coming on.
I'm doing good.
That's great. I love self-reliance just as a topic. It's a thing I'm really into. I pull myself up by my own bootstraps all the time. And since now I'm basically living in this one cube full time, I've tried to make my apartment as self-reliant as possible.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think I'm going to get into brewing, micro brewing,
really
craft beers in my apartment.
Really?
Over the winter, since I don't commute anymore, I've got all this extra time.
Oh no! You don't want Gabe. You don't want to do that. I don't know if you guys have ever gone to an industrial area and then been by one of those breweries where the garage door is just open and it just smells like wheat, just like like hot wheat air. And it's not. I wouldn't call it a bad smell, but it's like there. It's like present, and you're just like, this is weird.
Maybe I'll do some wine instead, Danny. How do you feel about that? If I start,
that's great. Yeah? I'm all about that.
Okay.
Some nice natural wine.
I'm just trying to be self-reliant.
Yeah, Shaoul, can you talk a little bit about what the institute does and the name and everything?
Sure. So yeah, they've been around since the 1970s. So it's way before big tech emerged.
Yeah.
And the focus is on two fronts. So the first has to do with, I would say, energy and utility focus. So that's self-reliance of small towns, focus on renewable energy, focusing on issues of waste management, and utilities in general, recycling, etc. Oh, wow. And that's been something that the Institute has been focused on for decades now, and has been very successful in implementing various projects across the U.S. And on the other front, we also promote the interests of small business and Main Street America.
Right. Okay.
So the origins of this branch of the work of the Institute emerged, during the 1980s with Walmart emerging and, big box emerging across the country, and, the effect it had on small and locally owned businesses, and the transformation of small towns across America. And with the emergence of Amazon into this field, it has also focused on Amazon's effect on small business and also advocacy for sellers and entities that sell their goods through the platform or in the e-commerce space. So my focus has been on advocacy in the e-commerce space, work on the antitrust issues that involve Amazon. That's the primary focus of the Institute, and I would say it's a very strong, one of the missions of the Institute is to promote anti-monopoly agenda, across the country.
So this Institute seems very like aesthetically Vermont. What I think of, like I just instantly think of Joni Mitchell and Ben and Jerry's 15 years ago, before they became a monopoly in the ice cream space.
It's definitely, I think I'm the only New York employee or New York based individual, but
everyone else is off the grid. It's just
right. So we have one of our centers is in Portland, Maine. And we have quite a significant presence in the Midwest, and there's also a headquarter in DC that's focused on advocacy. But we're pretty spread out.
Cool.
I have a question actually as well. It's so you were mentioning specifically that you monitored companies like Amazon and what have you. And how this institution kind of originated in the 1970s. Is there any kind of specific area and time when you guys sort of really noticed tech monopoly stuff sort of pick up? And I guess I've done some of my own research into companies like Amazon, and I mean, if I were to guess, I would say it was like maybe what, like 99, something like that, or somewhere around that area.
Right. So Amazon was, basically kind of got its start in the late 90s during the first .com bubble thing,
Mm-hmm.
1998. But the focus, so Stacy Mitchell, who's the co-director of, the initiatives I work under, started focusing on this area in the mid 2000s. So on Amazon in particular, and e-commerce pretty early on, and also on the anti-monopoly agenda. Another early kind of figure in that movement is Barry Lynn, who went on to, he was among the founders of Open Markets Institute, which is also an anti-monopoly nonprofit and advocacy group. So the focus has been there for quite a few years. And, I arrived late, only been there for a couple of years now. And, but yeah, the focus and the work on Amazon has been going on for quite a few years, and it's constantly evolving. So, garnering more attention and evolving into other areas of advocacy. But yes, it's quite a few years that the Institute has focused on Amazon.
Yeah, it's a good time period to really get into it. The mid 2000s. I mean, like if you want to talk about acquisitions, which we will get into, like 2004. That's when Google swallowed up YouTube. That's when that was bought. And
that was 2004.
Yeah, I remember specifically. I was in high school, and I was just and it was like YouTube was like its own weird little thing. Like it's like pre-Derek comedy, like.
Oh, whoa!
Yeah, this is waffle fries. Like this is like.
Yeah. No, Derek comedy. I just didn't realize that he was a product of like anti-competitive behavior.
He was one of the first. Yeah.
He's just a mergers and acquisition child. That's fascinating. Do you guys remember what was the cupcakes and the shoes videos?
Shoes.
Those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that pre-merger?
No, I honestly most shit was post-merger. Like it really wasn't
that early.
I don't yet. I mean, look, it's these. I'm trying to think of other tech giants that got swallowed up or were kind of acquisitioned after the .com bust. So after 2000,
sure.
Before shit really popped off. Sure. I mean, Google really started it. I mean, Google was all over that stuff, and Amazon was still in it. Sort of like people didn't know exactly what it was. It was still just sort of like
still
getting
into.
Books. It went. Yeah, it was just books. It was just started getting in, and they had a big kerfuffle with Toys R Us at the time. Like there was a big.
Nice.
And I mean, obviously, one of them is still a company today, and one of them is not. So, but yeah. Anyways,
Toys R Us famously didn't pivot to video.
No, they did not.
But today we're here to talk with Shaoul about the most recent and probably one of the more groundbreaking antitrust complaints that any of us have seen in our lifetimes. And that is the most recent complaint by the Federal Trade Commission, and then a separate complaint by 48 states and territories attorneys general against Facebook Inc. And what's amazing about this one, we talked most recently about the Google antitrust suit. Both of these were coming out of a House Antitrust Subcommittee hearing that led to a report that basically landed huge accusations against Apple, Amazon, Google, and Facebook. And Google was first. That one was by the Attorney General in some states. And now this one is the Federal Trade Commission. Just a reminder, all of these areas, any of them can sue for antitrust issues. And so they're doing it. And
it's a lot of them. It's 46 states. It's 46 of the states.
Guam, but not Alabama. Just
not Alabama, not South Dakota, not South Carolina. And what do you know what the last one is? Last one's kind of weird.
Georgia.
Yeah. Weird how it's not Georgia. That's a big boy right there.
Well, I mean, I always trust the elected officials in the state of Georgia to do their job, so I'm sure they had a good reason.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So anyway, so they launched it against Facebook, alleging basically it's got three big things against it. And Shaoul, let's go to you. What are the allegations lodged against Facebook?
So yeah, I think it's very interesting to take a look at these complaints, right? Because they were filed separately, and they also bring separate theories and separate causes of action. So if we start with the, should we start with the FTC complaint, or should we start?
I'm gonna be honest. I only read the FTC one, so
okay. So
let's start with
right.
that one. Yeah.
So so you want to start with the FTC? So
yeah, whatever makes the most sense coherently. Totally
right.
Fine.
So I think we can start with the FTC. So the FTC really brought and really stop me if I'm becoming like too technical or really going too deep in these issues. And if there's any clarifications and stuff, I'll be happy to stop and kind of go through them.
Oh, trust me, I will ask a question if I do not know what it is.
Right. So basically, the FTC based its lawsuit on a violation of what's called Section 2 of the Sherman Antitrust Act, which
what year did the Sherman Antitrust Act?
Right. So the Sherman Antitrust Act was passed in 1890. It's a common law statute in the sense that it's very open-ended. And what happened as a result is that the judiciary, the Supreme Court, basically fashioned kind of like the contours of what constitutes anti-competitive action or anti-competitive conduct under the statute. And
so it was a very vague law,
right?
And so the courts have had to interpret it,
right?
Okay.
So there's a few landmark decisions from the early 20th century that kind of defined the contours of the Sherman Act, and then there were a few amendments that were passed during Wilson's presidency. That's called the Clayton Act, and Justice Brandeis, when he was working for the Wilson administration, kind of was the operating the brain trust that came up with the FTC, and which is the Federal Trade Commission, and also thinking about the Clayton Act and tightening up, the antitrust laws. And since then, there's been a constant evolution of the Sherman Act, but it is marked since the 1980s. Conservative judges, Robert Bork, Scalia, and others really limited the scope of the types of activities that can be brought under the Sherman Act.
Right. We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
But a lot about mostly stuff that we learned from Zephyr Teachout.
Sure.
Yeah.
And Section 2 of the Sherman Act really deals with what's called unilateral conduct, which is the conduct or the anti-competitive activity of a single firm. And that's contra what's Section 1 conduct, which is conspiracies, which is example be price fixing.
So there's no conspiracies here. It's one firm.
Exactly. So no conspiracies here. It's a theory of harm that deals with the activities of a single firm. And the theory of harm that the FTC is bringing is a pattern of suppression of competition. So what they're alleging is that Facebook deliberately engaged in various types of activities, including acquisitions, the acquisition of Instagram, the acquisition of WhatsApp, to suppress any emerging firm or type of competition that might undermine their monopoly.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
And this is important to note that under current antitrust jurisprudence, a monopoly is not necessarily illegal. But what's illegal is what's called monopoly maintenance, which means using your monopoly power to suppress competitors and competition.
So do they have something that's separating monopoly power from regular power?
So the analysis really focuses on two issues when, courts analyze antitrust complaints. So the first stage is really to figure out whether the firm has monopoly power, whether it has the market power to achieve its goals. Because the operating assumption is that without that market power, without that economic power, that conduct is not harmful. So if I decide, for instance, to, I start a firm in a little town and I decide that to boycott, a certain product, I don't have the market power to really affect significant harm on the competitive process or on the market. But if I'm the most dominant firm in the town, right, and I decide to boycott someone, then there might be much, the repercussions will be much more severe.
And if your town is the internet, then you might have a much wider scope and potential for that, is, I guess, in this case what is sort of being alleged.
Right.
You can shadow ban anybody from getting any exposure.
Exactly.
I guess I did have one follow-up question, which is, you mentioned something about like there can be monopolies, but it's only if they cause harm. Like, is there any prominent example of that? Like that makes sense, because that almost is sort of, it sounds weird to me,
So this is again part of the Bork revolution and the conservative revolution of the 1980s and 90s, is throughout the 20th century, from from when the Clayton Act was passed under Wilson's administration, the presumption among judges and the Supreme Court was that monopolies were illegal. So there wasn't, without going into too much details on those mid-century decisions, de facto, the position of the Supreme Court was you can't be a monopoly without harming competition. So almost any activity
they're always together. Yeah.
Right.
It's like you can't be a great white shark without killing and eating baby seals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I dig it. Yeah.
Whereas that evolves to be
right. So in the 1980s, there's really a series of articles and research done by conservative economists from the Chicago School. And
what a coincidence.
Just cranking out the best boys to export all over the world to make things better.
Going from Chile to antitrust, baby.
They're like, look, we've got the corporations are still killer great white sharks, but they're Pixar lovable versions.
Yeah. They're like the Finding Nemo sharks that are like fish, all friends, not food.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
That's what Robert Bork thinks monopolies are.
So they really came to, their theory was that you can be a benign monopoly. So, there's some monopolies that are just, they become monopolies because they're just better than everyone else. And they're just like benign actors that enjoy a certain monopoly because they do it better than everybody else, and all the consumers want to consume their product and no one else.
Like Gabe's Instagram. Yeah, it's a benign monopoly. So I mean, like the idea was from Bork, from what I understand, it was a shift just to consumer prices and quality of the product.
Right. So that's more of the technical analysis, right? That's kind of diving into how courts analyze these issues and how they think about them. But yes, before the 1980s, courts would think about harm to competition. Yeah. So competition was defined broadly. It was more than just consumer prices. It could be innovation. It could be, a wide variety of public policy goals. For instance, that you want more than one, paper in a small town, for instance, right? Or you want you want competition, and you're not necessarily obsessed with consumer prices. It's not that consumer prices were not a factor whatsoever, but that wasn't the primary goal of the antitrust laws. It wasn't to protect consumers. It was to really focus on protecting competition and protecting free markets.
And if you're thinking about this as a worker, what do workers under, like the whole understanding of free market capitalism, the only agency that a worker has is that if you don't like your job, you can leave it, right? That's
Right.
why, that's the classic, anti-union talking point.
In theory, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's the classic anti-union talking point. It's the talking point for, whenever any politician on either side wants to, shit on the poor, they'll say get a job or go do something else, whatever. If there's a monopoly, you cannot actually go get another job. So there's,
right.
I think,
so that's another, right. So that's another type of harm that's totally out of the scope of, the orthodox modern antitrust, right? There's a trade-off, right? If, for instance, if we think about lower consumer prices, they might, entail lower wages, right? Because one way you can achieve lower prices is by cutting people's wages. So antitrust law would say it's great that you cut lower wages. If you cut wages, so long as consumers benefit with lower prices.
That's right. We pass the savings on to you, baby.
Yeah.
Yes. So the most extreme example of it right now is, for instance, Apple really trying to defend slave labor in China, right? And their strongest argument is, of course, lower consumer prices. So that you see it across the board. You see it with college football. You see it in the UFC antitrust lawsuit that's right now going on in Las Vegas.
Oh, I didn't realize that there is one.
Right. So the fighters are suing the UFC. And again, the UFC's argument is, we're suppressing the wages of UFC fighters so we can offer our products at a lower price.
Are they classified as independent contractors?
They are.
Yeah, okay, because I remember that from a wrestling documentary and how they have to sign non-compete clauses, but they're also independent contractors.
Correct.
David, are you ready for my disruptive, innovative app that we're about to make right now?
Okay.
It's Uber for MMA fighters.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like a seamless for mixed martial arts where all of us sign up, we put our stats in there, and if they need an independent contractor, we just get a ping and we can pick if we want to be in the octagon or not that night.
Yeah, just a nice little mixture of player haters, ball and bum fights. Just who's ready?
That is the race to the bottom. Is like turning the whole world of unemployed people into like a big bum fight, Royal Rumble.
Yeah, it's also the UFC doesn't surprise me at all, especially because of the recent episode of Pawn Stars I watched, in which Dana White proceeded to go into their Las Vegas location and be like, I'd like to buy a $10,000 samurai sword. It's just sort of like, okay, man, you got too much money. All right, too much. He bought 2 swords. He ended up buying 2 swords.
Quick update on the Uber front. Speaking of consumer prices, after Prop 22 passed, one of the big points of Prop 22, which is that if you make these independent contractors workers, then your prices are going to go up. Prop 22 passes in California. These workers are deemed independent contractors by law, enshrined, and then they still raise prices. They still raise their prices. And what do they blame? The incremental marginal benefits that are like thrown out as pittance onto these workers as a result of Prop 22 passing as like this like concession, as this like buyout from them getting employment status. So anyways.
Yeah.
Was that a common thing? Like I don't remember this exactly. Like, did people talk about labor competition and labor supply, Shaoul, in pre-Borkian antitrust theory?
So, this is when we talk about labor supply, we talk about suppliers in general. under antitrust law, and
Okay.
that's a concept that's called monopsony, which
Nice.
is distinguished from monopoly power. So monopsony power is the power over input provider. So it could be, labor that, the input is the labor. It could be raw materials, or it could be anything in the vertical chain of a corporation, right? So, the raw materials that go into the product that is then sold to consumers.
Right. I
So,
mean,
yeah.
I mean, certainly antitrust is a capitalist theory, by commodifying workers. That seems to be very much doing so. But I guess I was kind of thinking about it like worker choice. Is that something that's kind of discussed in antitrust as like a benefit for a worker to be able to choose to go to a competitor?
Right. So that's really kind of one of the blind sides, of course, of the Chicago School and conventional antitrust today, is that we're not concerned with, we don't treat the workers as consumers of jobs, right? We don't consume, like, for instance, we don't consider, like, in the Amazon context, Amazon sellers as the consumers of fulfillment services, right?
Mm-hmm.
And who gets to be called or termed the consumer is also a political question, right? Who has standing to complain, and who are the consumers that are getting harm that's a question of political economy. So now there's a debate, and I think a very positive debate about including more classes of individuals or types of business within recognized harms. So in the UFC case, now we're recognizing the fighters as a class being harmed on the monopsony side as input providers of labor. And that case, might have ramifications across the economy, because we could start framing antitrust cases as cases in which laborers are forced into working conditions that are not as advantageous as they would be if they weren't forced to sell to that one entity. If there was competition over the labor of UFC fighters, if there was another UFC, right, or three more UFC kind of arrangements, and there was competition over the labor of the fighters, or their skills, we could assume that their ability to negotiate higher wages and better benefits, etc., would dramatically improve.
This has already happened too. There's like if I'm understanding you correctly, I believe this has already happened. In 2009, there was a lawsuit that was basically alleged against Apple, Microsoft, I think a couple other big tech companies, right, where there was literally and this is just a random thing that I read in a previous book, in the Amazon book I think I was talking about, but it essentially these big companies were getting non-compete clauses.
Right. So yeah, there was kind of collusion among the big tech companies to suppress the wages of employees in those companies, and I think that case was settled by the Obama DOJ, but I'm not off the cuff. It's hard for me to but it was investigated at the time.
Yeah, and it's a weird concept, because we're talking previously about UFC fighters, which is an interesting analogy, because they literally could beat their owners up. They could beat them the fuck up, But commonly, you're talking about people who have really terrible jobs and what have you. But what happened in 2009 is so weird, because it's people who are literally getting paid like $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year, and being told, no, there's even a ceiling for you on this. Like, not even you are part of this. And it's like, I don't really have a lot of sympathy for those people because they make so much money, but it even counts for them, which is bizarre.
Right. So right. That's kind of, that has been, an issue, and it's something that's being, debated now within, whether antitrust laws should address these harms. I think there's a growing consensus that, yeah, labor is definitely something that should be considered in these types of analysis. So,
So going back to Facebook, so there's three allegations, core allegations. One, or at least in the FTC complaint, one, they bought anti-competitively Instagram. Two, they anti-competitively bought WhatsApp. And three, they anti-competitively use their software and their platform, these things called APIs, in order to lock out competition.
right.
Otherwise.
Right. Those are the main kind of issues. Right.
So one thing that I saw from the quotes from the FTC one, and was just how flagrant Mark Zuckerberg was about saying, I want to buy these products because I can't compete with them. I mean, just in the complaint over and over and over again, he keeps saying things like, it's better to buy than compete. We might want to consider paying a lot of money for Instagram. And like, it just, I mean, just over and over. And he keeps saying the same things about, I don't know if we can keep up with WhatsApp. WhatsApp is doing things much better than we are. I mean, that's not a direct quote, but I mean, over and over in these emails, is that something that you have seen in your work on antitrust, just having a CEO just being so dumb about antitrust issues?
So I think like we are very fortunate that he was so blatant about these issues, and it just shows, I think it just shows how the currents and like the current kind of thinking around antitrust and big tech has shifted.
Yeah.
There's no chance he would make those statements today, right? In today's environment and the way that Facebook is being criticized. But back then, they were champions of the American economy. They were celebrated as, rejuvenation. Silicon Valley was really touted as this miracle of the American economy in the 21st century. And I think he felt he was on top and he could get away with these statements. And the interesting thing is that those statements are still not enough in the context of the antitrust law for any type of, this is not gotcha the same way you would have in a criminal case, right? Because our laws have been subverted in such a way that only economists get to determine whether activities were, done with an anti-competitive motive or not. It's kind
University of Chicago economists?
Exactly. So it's kind of like an insane standard, but we're saying, like he doesn't know what he's talking about because he doesn't understand the market. We need to look at the dollars and cents and analyze the data to see whether it was, motivated by anti-competitive reasons, which again is insane, and it's not the way antitrust laws were applied in the past. But he
is a dumb loser, college dropout. So,
but in a sense, like if I'm Facebook's attorneys, that's not what I'm concerned about the most. Surprisingly, I mean, it's really bad in terms of the PR, and if this case ever ends up with if it's going to be a jury trial, if it ends up with a jury, I think like that is pretty helpful to convince the jury that there's a violation of the antitrust laws. But just in terms of, the analysis, and this is the absurd part, this is not going to play a large factor in the way the case is argued.
So, I mean, how can they push for, if there's like some sort of summary judgment and the judge is going to rely on the opinion of economists?
Yeah. That's basically how antitrust law works.
Sucks, man.
Economists that charge something like $1,500 an hour to write reports about.
So they'll come in as an expert witness.
Yes.
And both sides will be able to present.
And the government is going to have their own expert.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
And what's really interesting in this case, right, and why it's unique and it's a landmark case, and it's really. It's hard to understand how significant this case is on so many fronts in today's environment. But one of the aspects is that the government is not focusing on consumer prices, which, used to be the holy grail of antitrust lawsuits.
Right.
What they're focusing is on harm to innovation and harm to competition, which seems like
Yeah.
a bygone era. And that's like a radical shift in the government's goals and, you know, the way they think about antitrust violations. And that would be also the hardest part to kind of argue and quantify, because Facebook is definitely going to argue that you need to show some harm in the sense of higher consumer prices or lower quality or something quantifiable.
They
It might have,
destroyed Vine.
yeah,
They destroyed. I don't know if you guys know this, but for those listening out there, in the complaint, it explicitly points out that Mark Zuckerberg signed off on killing Vine. Basically, he locked them out of the APIs, and since then they just were on a straight downhill. So the greatest app that ever existed, the 6-second video Vine, and like, I'm being facetious there, but it really was a fun idea. Just 6-second videos, shareable, nothing else, completely destroyed by Zuckerberg alone.
right. So if we think about like the consumer harm here, like where they're still kind of angling for consumer harm, they're talking about the quality of the Facebook interface. So Facebook Blue, you know, the Facebook we all know, and how, you know, there's ads placed in weird places. They're just like the quality of the content you're receiving is lower. But really the focus is harming competition and suppressing competition and potential rivals like Vine, buying out competition like Instagram and WhatsApp, and freezing out other competitors like Google Plus, for instance.
They were also trying to buy Snapchat. I saw the complaint, and also trying to buy Twitter, but both of the firms seemingly rejected them. But it got redacted. So
well, I personally like how all of these interfaces look exactly the same now.
And, yeah.
I don't know why you guys don't like that. And you know, I guess the only things I miss are MySpace and Friendster.
Yeah, it's I mean there is like a weird philosophical, like, you can muse about it extensively, because like even before we started talking about this and we started our meeting, I was just thinking, just like, man, what a weird position to have been in, to be a person, the guy Tom who started MySpace, and just have been around for like a hot 6 years, you know, maybe it was 7, something to that extent, and just being like, I'm out. Mm-hmm. You get bought out by fucking Murdoch, who consequently the whole product fails. It means nothing in real life now, and you're just fine. It's the constant thing that David is always referring to, where he, like, you kind of beat capitalism. You win capitalism. I mean, yeah, his trophy is he's like kind of the first failed social media app, but it's just sort of like, he's the one who's winning now. I mean, you look at a guy like Mark Zuckerberg, and that guy went from a person who's just like kind of just a nerd and maybe annoying to just this weird doll, this weird kind of, you know, cursed Greek figure, where like he is just like, I mean, I was watching, you know, some C-SPAN clip today where, you know, oddly enough, like Josh Hawley is like talking to him, and, you know, you like you were referencing, you know, there's all these emails and correspondences where he's literally saying, we can't compete with these people. And then at the same time, in front of Congress, he's like, I don't know if I know exactly what you're talking about, but I'm happy to get back to you on this later. Like, it's like, like he's literally just being customer operations for his company. It's like the one time he does that.
He does that a lot. In the 2018 hearing about, you know, the 2016 election and privacy and stuff, just all the time, they would bring up core components of how their company worked, of how Facebook worked, and he just constantly said, I don't know. Like, he said he had no idea what Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act is, which to those listening, to those of us here, have no idea what it is. But if you are a web platform, you know exactly what CDA 230 is. Yeah. Everyone, like, for him to say he does not know is him lying.
Yeah, CDA if people don't know, CDA 230 is the provision that web hosts or what have you, Facebook, Twitter, etc., aren't liable for the content that
in like a defamation context.
In a defamation, it is, and also in recent news, it is what Donald Trump has sort of like stubbornly been trying to get banned, in this sort of goofy in the defense bill that got passed. And this thing is so bipartisan to the point where like the Senate passed it by like 81, like an unheard of number, and like today, and like the House passed it by like 400 odd something, like huge veto proof majorities. So for like what David is saying, for Zuckerberg to be like, I'm not entirely sure what that is, he's just a very bad liar.
He was prepped. He was prepped by counsel, and that's the only thing that you can say without perjuring yourself.
Yeah.
Or effectively testifying against your own interest. Anyways,
he pleads the fifth.
Yeah, I guess he could have done that. Okay, so I want to get finished. So that's the FTC complaint, seemingly, and then we have
just one more component. I think that's interesting to talk about is what the government is asking as a remedy, which is also a radical departure from, the antitrust bread and butter of the last 30 years, where the government is actually asking the court to break up Facebook and spin off Instagram and WhatsApp into separate entities. So basically to unscramble the eggs.
Ooh, I like that analogy. That's good.
Yeah, I didn't come up with the scrambling the eggs. That's JP Morgan when they tried to break up his steel trust, but it's still used today, right? That's still the way that the Facebook attorneys are talking about it. Like, you can't unscramble the eggs, but
oh yeah, watch me. Now Facebook isn't part of Instagram. Boom. I unscrambled them.
Right. And there's there's like a sidebar discussion about how difficult it actually would be to separate those entities. So during the congressional committee, they collected testimony from former Facebook employees that said, oh, it's actually not going to be a big deal at all to separate Instagram and Facebook.
Of course it's not.
Right. But the Facebook attorneys and people, that work in think tanks that are funded by big tech are saying, this is going to be a monumental task.
Well, since this has been going on, Facebook has made it harder for that to happen. They've merged their back-end software of Instagram, WhatsApp, and Facebook, original, all together. And they're now, if you notice on your Facebook Messenger, it directly connects to Instagram DMs. So when you slide into someone's DMs, you can slide into like
all
your
their DMs, yeah.
All of their DMs, yeah.
God. This is so brilliant. That reminds me of The Fly, right? Like, the remake, right? So when our boy Jeff Goldblum is trying to drag a pregnant Gina Davis into the teleporter. And he's like, we'll all merge together, you, me, and the baby, and also a little bit of this fly, right? So like that's what if Facebook can do that now, then if they'll be like, well, we're inextricably linked at a DNA molecular level with these other companies. So you'd have to shoot us all in the head. You can't break us apart. We wouldn't survive.
Meanwhile, you got a lot of people who are like, I'll do it. You're just like the guy from The Dark Knight. Let me be the one.
That section, the section of The Fly in this context is just like the DM from like your now racist high school best friend. That's what's coming into your Facebook Messenger, and now that's going into your Instagram DMs as well.
It's really interesting also to see, not only on the legal front, but also on the PR front. When Instagram was first, acquired by Facebook, a lot of people moved to Instagram or said, I deleted my Facebook account, but they didn't really realize that they're still in the Facebook ecosystem. You know, it's like eating at Chipotle and stopping eating at McDonald's, right? You're still eating at McDonald's. It's just like branded differently. And I think that what happened in the last few years is like Amazon realized, I'm sorry, Facebook realized that this unscrambling of the eggs issue is going to come up. And now every time you log into Instagram or WhatsApp, it says on the bottom, I think powered by Facebook or a Facebook app or something like that. So they changed their strategy and now they're very much explicit about that relationship. And would really, you know, I would love to be a fly on a wall in that meeting where they decided to make that shift and what motivated it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'd love to be Jeff Goldblum on that wall, just dripping onto the table.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're calling for the breakup. I mean, Shaoul, how likely do you think this is going to happen for there to be an actual breakup?
So that's really interesting. So there was a piece that came out in Politico today where they basically asked me the same question. And, you know, like Facebook obviously said, you know, no chance in hell. It's unprecedented. Some big law attorneys also said, you know, this is going to be extremely difficult, most likely not going to happen. But, you know, in all of the bad Supreme Court case law in antitrust, there's this one weird case from 1990 where the court reiterates, you know, surprisingly, that these types of spin-offs are the most natural and straightforward remedy in cases of unlawful or uncompetitive acquisitions.
1990.
Yes, Scalia signed on to that opinion. So it's
damn.
Yeah. So it's a unanimous opinion. And so I cannot explain how this happened. But that is most likely why the FTC went with spin-offs as a remedy here, because they feel secure enough that the precedent legally is there for them to break them up. And and it's going to be a really interesting process, but I think that it's definitely going to be on the table. If the case will settle, maybe, you know, who knows what's going to happen.
What would a settlement look like?
Yeah, I don't even know what is.
Are we gonna finally get paid for our content?
Yeah. What does that look like?
So if I was Facebook, you know, one way to try to make this go away is deal with the API issues.
Yeah.
So really to pledge for some kind of like non-discrimination based on your activities on their platforms, whether you're a competitor or not. I don't know how.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but didn't they already cease the discrimination in 2018?
So they say so, but really, you know, like it would be something where the court really steps in, or there's like some administrator that really oversees the entire process on the Facebook end.
Okay.
I don't think this is going to happen, right? Because it's so hard to administer. You know, and it's just unclear. I think, you know, fines is definitely not going to help. You know, the Europeans already tried that route with a slap on the wrist for big tech, and you know, that's nothing, right? So I think it's likely. I mean, I would say that if they can prove their case, if the FTC can prove their case, there's a high likelihood that, you know, we're going to see a breakup. So the more, you know, the part that's kind of like 50-50 is whether they're going to find them in violation of Section 2. But I would say that if they do, we might see something similar to Standard Oil happening with Facebook.
Wow. And that would be so. I mean, I don't want to be pessimistic, although, see, this is the X factor in it, is because we are in the unique position where this isn't so clean cut politically speaking. You know, I mean, if anything, you know, the conservative, you know, agenda is highly suspect of, you know, tech firms like this. The ones that are the ones that are bought out obviously aren't, but, you know, I mean, fucking old ass, you know, legislatures, like they're always, you know, Chuck Grassley does not like Mark Zuckerberg, for one thing. And yeah, it's just one of those few things where it's its own weird little third rail where you might actually
it is a really bizarre constellation. I think, there's 5 commissioners that decide whether to sue, and it was a coalition of 2 Democratic commissioners and the chair of the FTC, who's a hardcore Republican. So it's I think the stars aligned for Facebook, for this case, but I'm going to take it because, the precedent that's going to be made in this case is going to affect other industries where maybe conservatives would be more reluctant to act in. So, if you create
like
a good precedent here,
or fossil fuels or
exactly, or agriculture, or pharmaceuticals. So I'll take it. Yeah.
Wow. So that's my next question. Is William Barr is leading the Google one, right? So
weird.
Yeah, I think he just resigned today. But yeah.
He just resigned today?
What?
Yeah, just a few hours ago.
Oh, that's fucking hilarious.
Breaking news on Ponzi Scream.
Yeah.
This episode's coming out on Thursday, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Was Trump to the left of Obama on antitrust, or is he? Is his administration?
I mean,
so yeah, I'm gonna say something controversial here.
Do it.
Because you co-authored a piece in The Guardian with Matt Stoller, who notoriously is a big critic of the Obama administration. So bring it on, man. Let's hear it.
So I'm not as critical of Obama per se. I think there was just it was a general feeling or a general atmosphere at the time where we need to, encourage and really promote these champions in the tech sector. I think a lot of it had to do with, the threat of China and, like the US hegemony and jobs leaving and et cetera, et cetera. And then you have this one shiny star in Silicon Valley that's influencing the world, like 2011, the revolution in Egypt, and all these positive events that were, influenced by Facebook.
Oh yeah, Arab Spring, so great. It worked out for everyone.
Right. But I think that there was kind of, I think they were naive. It was really kind of like the way that we think about, I guess, the fall of the Soviet Union in the 1990s with Bill Clinton, where there's like this new world order. I think they really thought that, these guys are going to, this is a new world order. Like, we're all going to live in this digital economy and these are our national champions. And they weren't scrutinized, we're not going to have a lot of time to talk about the state's complaint, the AG complaint. But one thing that's missing, what's missing from the, the FTC complaint, which I think is a really good and strong complaint, is the whole history of all of these mergers being approved during the Obama administration by the FTC, right? Yeah. Not approved, but basically they said we're going to waive it now and we could challenge it later. But they passed, right? And there wasn't a real serious investigation into these acquisitions at the time. And the AGs really focus on that issue in their, it's kind of like a very, they're throwing shade on the FTC in a weird way, right? They're kind of like, you did a really bad job, but this was a pattern of anti-competitive conduct, which is totally glossed in the FTC complaint, right? The FTC complaint doesn't talk about all of these mergers because it looks really bad in retrospect. And one of the arguments that Facebook counsel is doing now is like, they're like, oh, you told us it was okay and it was fine that we merged. Like, how can you tell us now that it's like a violation of the law? And technically they're, incorrect. And also just in terms of like the substance of the law, they're incorrect. But I think it is a, there, in a way we need to talk about the Obama legacy When it comes to antitrust, we need to talk about it in the context of the foreclosure crisis. You know, David Dayen has done a lot of work in that context. And, you know, 20 years from now, I don't think we're going to look at that period on that period very favorably when it comes to, you know, political economy and what, you know, consolidation. So, yeah, that would be my long answer.
So
that's fast. That's absolutely fascinating, and really it makes sense, because if you say like, oh, you let us do this back then, all you have to say is like, yeah, and look what fucking happened. We let you have the keys to the car for a solid 6 to 8 years, and in addition to just causing a lot of chaos, you're just really dumb about it. I mean, again, I cannot emphasize enough, just culturally, like what these tech heads have basically done with themselves. They're satires of themselves. You know, fucking Jack Dorsey looks like a goddamn monk who got like enveloped by a dark spirit. Mark Zuckerberg is a plain non-humored fool who's trying to take over islands in Hawaii. They embarrass themselves all the time.
Mark
about
Zuckerberg
this.
looks like a single coconut popsicle. You know,
he does.
But yeah, it's a really ridiculous argument. It's like Facebook is saying now, you know, like we murdered someone, but like you can't charge us for killing them with this gun because I passed the background check, right? Like, oh, you gave me this, you know, you gave me a license for this gun, so it's okay that I killed someone, right? It's just a ridiculous argument.
You all remember when Saddam Hussein was really surprised that George Bush was upset when he invaded Kuwait? He was like, "Well, I thought you guys were fine with us doing that. Like we told Jim Baker that we were gonna invade Kuwait," and he was like, "Yo, man, it's a vibe. You do you, fam." And then he just got on his plane and left.
Just a bunch.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of diarrhea salesmen with a mouthful of samples, my man. Ugh.
So in your analogy, Gabe, Facebook is Saddam Hussein.
That's right. They're not doing anything wrong.
They don't. Yeah.
They asked the government, "Can we do this?" And
like, yeah.
And Barry and his team were like, "Yo, fam, you do you. We need like tech poptimism right now.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to be the hero. Be the hero that Gotham needs."
Yeah. Yo, actually, I really do think about the Dark Knight and the political economy of like what the Batman in that movie had to do, which is like do evil things for the sake of upholding the structure, which is like makes me think of Too Big to Fail, bailouts, you know, allowing for all these anti-competitive mergers to happen. I mean, just like over and over and over again.
Dude, literally the ultimate Obama era movie. It came out in like 2008, 2007. Like
I don't know. I thought it was 9 or something. I don't know, maybe 8.
That's it, man. That's it. You know.
So okay, Shaoul, anything that you want to suss out, no pun intended, about the House, or not the House, the state's complaint that's different from the FTC one that people that listeners should know about?
Right. So their focus is really about this pattern of acquisitions. I think their complaint is more aggressive in a sense. It's more, you know, it's written in a more aggressive way. But really the difference here is the focus on these acquisitions and, you know, what they said to the FTC, you know, what they promised to the FTC and what they actually did in reality. Is a major part of the state's complaint. And, you know, the states are also moving to break up Facebook. So you have 2 bites at the apple here. One in the state's lawsuit and one in the FTC lawsuit. So and
they're both going to be in front of different judges.
Wow. So you can get like one saying no breakup, but then another saying breakup, right? So it's ultimately it's in the district court's discretion to decide whether to break them up or not.
Wow.
That's I just want to see that Louisiana Supreme Court judge like, Bailiff, have my lemonade ready. I believe this will be a quick court hearing. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, so why didn't they just have every single state file a different lawsuit? That way you increase your chances of success.
So those cases, so the states they bring their cases of private plaintiffs. So the states, for purposes of the antitrust laws, are kind of like you and me. Like there's no difference. The only difference comes in standing. So they can basically represent the citizens of their state. They have standing that's broader than an individual, but like for all terms of purposes, they're like people. So it would be kind of like a class action. So if they all filed separately, they would probably be bunched up into a single case anyway. So they just all filed jointly the same way like a class action would proceed.
Very interesting. Yeah, definitely sounds like the FTC is going at it technically, and the states are scorned lovers who are just they're more passionate, more juicy about it.
I think so. And I think like this is going to be also probably the more interesting trial to follow, because I think a lot of those issues are going to be brought up in that case, right? All of that history during the Obama administration and what was going on in the FTC.
We're people can get messy with
receipts. Yeah.
And it's interesting to note that a lot of the people that were actors back then are also vying for positions in the Biden administration, right?
After spending years working in tech.
Or big law.
Yeah. I mean, you got David Plouffe, you got Anthony Fox, you got Tony, what's his name?
Shaoul.
No, I don't know. Someone else, Tony West, I think.
Tony West. Yeah. Uber.
Yeah.
I think this is fascinating. I'm really curious to see where this ends up going. I feel like this is basically just the beginning of our conversation. And I mean, once we have more of an answer, we got to talk to you again about this, because this is absolutely fascinating, and there's so much juice to this.
Are we expecting another one leveled against Amazon and against Apple?
I mean, we know that the agencies are investigating. That was announced publicly. And, we know that the turf was divided between the FTC and the DOJ on the big four. But It's hard to tell when and if those lawsuits are actually going to be filed, right? Also, now there's a transition of power where the DOJ is going to become Democratic again. And then in the FTC, we're losing one commissioner, and it's going to be four commissioners, 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. It's going to be deadlocked. So it's probably not going to happen within the next few weeks or months. But I would say it's, we can expect more in this big tech front.
Wow. Do you think that Biden is going to continue along? I mean, are they going to push aggressively on this?
That's the billion-dollar question, right? Who's going to become the next AG? Who's going to, step into the antitrust division? Who's going to become the next FTC chairman? Yeah, that's an interesting thing to follow for sure.
Well, Shaoul, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. Love to have you back on as this stuff develops.
Sure, it was a pleasure.
Yeah, man. This is absolutely fascinating. Definitely want to hear more about it.
Sure, love to.
Well, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to go back to my Facebook groups now. I've got a couple that I need to
post.
Perfect.
Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for listening. We're out here. Leave a, comments and all that stuff. Hit us up. We're all ears.
Yeah. Please do follow Ponzi Scream's Twitter account at Ponzi_Scream. And I'm David Bradley Eisenberg, and with me is you guys.
Gabe Pacheco. You can find me at Gabe Pack1 on Instagram, and definitely write a review, leave us a 5-star, whatever. Share episodes with your friends that like white collar crime analyzed from a leftist perspective. And check out Funhouse Comedy on Wednesday nights at 9:30.
That's right.
Yeah, baby.
That's right.
Yeah, baby.
That's right. Break it up, man. Let's go back to those pure Instagram days. You know, I mean, we all. Nobody likes Facebook, and you know what? Instagram concept's good. I like the concept. I like pictures.
Mm-hmm.
I like pictures better. All right, you know. We all like that.
I had some really good Vines, and I want them back.
My friend Steven was a Vine star. He had like 1 million followers.
What?
Yeah, I'm not even joking. He was super well known.
That's so cool. All right. Well, he is much. Oh man, we can't take that. I just want that magic back. I just want it back.
He chose poorly.
Oh man. All right. Well, bye everyone.
All right. Later.
Thanks, friends. Bye.